Shalom Aleichem, Mishpachim. I'm coming to you with my new sefer, Chayenu booklet. This has the whole shebang in it. It's got the Tanya, the Torah with Rashi, the Haftarah with commentary, daily Tehillim, Hayom Yom, Rambam, more Rambam. It's got daily wisdom from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's got Tanakh, teachings on redemption, Geula, Chassidus, Talmud. I can't name them all. It's got all of this. I love this sefer. I am going to read here Tanya, page 51. Tanya. All right, here we go. The 28th of Kislev. I know I'm a day behind. I've been reading, what chapter is this? Chapter 4, great. I've been reading the leap year readings in my lessons in Tanya, and I guess it's not a leap year because in here it's showing that we're not in the leap year, so I have to backtrack myself and get on track. All right, so today's not Sunday, today is Monday, so but still, all right. In today's lesson, the godly soul's garments, thoughts, speech, and actions of Torah and mitzvos are actually higher than the soul itself, for they are nothing other than God's wisdom and will, even in their physical expression. Hence, by investing itself in such apparel, the soul ascends even higher. The flow. Until now, it has been explained that the divine soul has three garments in which it clothes itself: the thought, speech, and action of Torah and the commandments. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to state that, unlike physical garments, which are less important than their wearer, the garments of the divine soul are even loftier than the soul which wears them. Thus, wearing its garments, thinking and speaking words of Torah, and acting in performance of the commandments elevates the soul to a higher level. For, since Torah and the commandments are one with God, the Jew, by donning the garments of Torah and the commandments, also becomes united with him. In the Alter Rebbe's words, now these three garments deriving from the Torah and its commandments, though they are called merely garments of the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, nevertheless their quality, the quality of the garments of the Torah and its commandments, is infinitely higher and greater than that of the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama themselves. For as explained in the Zohar, Torah and the Holy One, blessed be He, are entirely one. This means, since Torah is the wisdom and will of the Holy One, blessed be He, the wisdom of Torah expresses God's wisdom, its practical application and laws. Whether or not a particular object is kosher, expresses His will. It is one with His God. It is one with His glory and essence, since He is the knower, the knowledge, and the known, as explained above in chapter 2, in the name of Maimonides, that these three aspects separate and distinct in terms of human intellect are as they relate to God, as they relate to God, one and the same entity. They are all godliness. The Torah, being God's intellect, is thus one with God Himself, and when a Jew understands and unites himself with it, he is united with God Himself. From the above, we understand that since the garments of thought and speech of Torah, study, and the active performance of the commandments are united with God, they are even higher than the soul itself. However, a question presents itself. How can it be said that in understanding Torah, one comprehends God's wisdom and will, when God's wisdom, like God Himself, is infinitely beyond man's limited comprehension? This will now be explained. Although the Holy One, blessed be He, is called Ein Sof, the Infinite One, and His greatness can never be fathomed, and no thought can apprehend Him at all. And so are also His will and His wisdom, infinite and unfathomable, as it is written, There is no searching of his understanding. And it is also written, when you will search to understand God, will you find. And it is further written, for my thoughts are not like your thoughts, says God to man. This human thought is incapable of grasping divine thought. How then can it be said that in understanding Torah, man grasps God's wisdom? To this, the Alter Rebbe answers that God compressed and lowered his wisdom, clothing it in the physical terms and objects of Torah and its commandments, so that it might be accessible to human intelligence, in order that man may thereby be united with God. Concerning this disparity between human intelligence and divine wisdom, our sages have said, where you find the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be He, there you find His humility. How can we approach God's greatness to find it and be united with it? Through His humility, by His lowering Himself to our level. Hish tal shelus. Hish tal shelut. God compressed His will and wisdom in the 613 commandments of the Torah and their laws. As mentioned above, the logic of the law represents divine wisdom and the ruling divine will. And in the letter combinations of Scripture, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, the very letters and words of Scripture contain God's will and wisdom. Wherefore, even one who is ignorant of their meaning fulfills the precept of Torah study by merely reciting them. And God's will and wisdom are also contained in the exposition of these verses found in the Agadot and the Midrashim of our sages of blessed memory. In all of these did God compress His will and wisdom in order that every neshama, or even the lower soul levels of ruach and nefesh, situated as they are in the human body, will be able to grasp them with its intellect. And in order that it, the nefesh, or ruach, or neshama, fulfill them, as far as they can be fulfilled in action, speech, and thought, thereby clothing itself with all its 10 faculties in these 3 garments of thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvot. Therefore has the Torah been compared to water, for just as water descends from a higher level to a lower level, the water which reaches the lower level is the same water that left its source within the higher level. Unlike light, for example, which also travels from its source, but in whose case it is not the source, the luminous body itself that is transmitted, but only a ray of it. And unlike intellect, which can also be communicated from one person to another, but in whose case, too, it is not the source, the teacher's mind itself that transmits it, self to the lower level, that transmits itself to the lower level, the student's mind, but only the idea, a product of the source. Just as we find in the analogy of water, so has Torah descended from its place of glory, the lofty spiritual plane which is its source. In its original state, it is God's will and wisdom, and Torah is one and the same with God, whom no thought can apprehend at all. On that plane, Torah is incomprehensible to man, as is God Himself. From there, the Torah has journeyed in a descent through hidden stages, stage after stage, in the Hishtal Shelut of the worlds, the chain-like order of interconnected spiritual worlds explained more fully in Chapter 2. Torah descended through all these levels, until it clothed itself in material matters and things of this corporeal world, which comprise nearly all the Torah's commandments and their laws. Nearly all the mitzvot involve material objects. Tzitzit are made of wool, tefillin of leather, and so on. Even the spiritual mitzvot involve material objects in their halachot, the laws governing their practical application. For example, the mitzvah of loving one's fellow, although essentially a spiritual mitzvah as it consists of an emotion, love, demands that one aid his fellow Jew materially, financially, etc., these being concrete, material expressions of a spiritual mitzvah. Thus, the Torah clothed itself in the material objects with which the mitzvot are performed, and also in the physical letter combinations written with ink in a book, namely the 24 books of Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. As mentioned above, the letters and words contain the holiness of God's will and wisdom. Torah underwent this great descent so that every human thought be able to grasp them, and so that even speech and action, which are on a level lower than thought, be able to grasp them, God's will and wisdom, and clothe themselves in them by performing the commandments in speech and action. The takeaway: the actual performance of a commandment can take you spiritually further than your natural spiritual standing. A commandment makes you one with God. All right, and that is the reading of Tanya from my Sefer Chayenu. All right, have a wonderful night. Laila Tov.